So today I'm here to talk about visas and visa scams, and you might be wondering, well, why visa scams specifically? And it's a very good question. I have 10 years experience with the British Home Office, which is the department that deals with immigration and visa issuance in the UK. My wife's spouse visa, we dealt with everything from her entry visa into the UK to a renewal 30 months later, to a permanent residency application. So, I've gone through a decade's worth of experience with the Home Office and seeing how their visas work, how their visas don't work, the processes involved, points where scammers could become interested and sort of sidle into the proceedings. And it's an incredible amount of money. Like the British immigration system is probably the most expensive system in the world. Like a standard spouse visa renewal is something like £3,000 every 30 months until you gain permanent residency. And the actual cost to the Home Office of processing an application is significantly lower than the cost that they apply to the applicants. So an application for permanent residency might cost the Home Office about £120 to £170 to process. The applicant will pay about £2,800. So there's huge markups involved. So when scammers see people applying for visas, when scammers know that people apply for visas, especially in the UK, they know that these people have a theoretical chunk of cash that they could potentially go in and steal. They know these people have the cash to hand. And in terms of why visa systems attract scammers, in addition to the huge costs incurred and the amount of money that they know people will have available, the rules are incredibly complicated. To gain permanent residency in the UK is an incredibly difficult process. We've got some of the most complicated rules around. We're ranked very, very low in the world rankings for family reunion rights. So scammers know this. And they know that if they come in and offer help and assistance to people looking to apply for visas, work visas, student visas, spouse visas, they know they are going to have a very, very receptive target audience. There's incredibly tough and harsh punishments for so-called rule breakers. You've only got to make a slight mistake on a form, forget to do something very minor, and you can be penalized for it, you can have a bad mark on your record, you can be sent to prison, you can be deported, you can have your residency status revoked. And in many cases, it doesn't have to be an error on your part, it can be something the Home Office or one of the subcontractors, the third parties, they've made the mistake, and you'll still take the fall for it unless you can prove otherwise. So the scammers know that there's a huge audience out there of people crying out for help. They're losing all this money applying for visas. They're running into all these problems with the rules and the punishments. And it's completely disorganized. Like, people think you deal with the Home Office and that's it. But in reality, there's a lot of third-party companies that you will deal with. So you might deal with VFS Global, and you may have dealt with them if you've applied for visas in other countries, and they do a lot of the admin work. So if you do a biometric scan, you probably deal with VFS. If you hand paperwork in, you'll probably deal with them. If you go for a language test, you'll deal with another organization. If you do the Life in the UK test, you'll deal with another organization. So scammers know that these are very complicated chains. The rules are complicated. The applicants have got a chunk of cash to hand for the application process. And they know that there's lots of different organizations that people have to deal with on a daily basis. So there's confusion in the mix, and they know that essentially people that apply for visas are easy targets. And it's not just people coming to the UK, it's people leaving the UK, just going on holiday. A really common scam are the ESTA help fees. So the ESTA, if you're not familiar with it, it's a visa waiver to the United States. You'll find a lot of bogus websites in search engine results in the sponsored advertising section. And these sites will typically add huge fees to the cost of not just visas, but the ESTA waiver. And most search engines forbid these services. They forbid these sites from appearing in search results. Some of them are very specific, some of them are more general, but the basic idea is that if you're able to apply for any government-offered service online directly from the government that you're applying for, you should not be seeing paid search results advertising these same services, but with a big fee added on. They don't like it. Google especially is very specific on this. And if you look for some of the common search terms for, related to ESTA in Google Trends, ESTA answers very frequently hits the 75 to 100 mark. These are very, very popular search terms. ESTA questions, same thing, very popular. Fill in ESTA, one of the most common search terms you can find for the ESTA process, hugely, hugely popular. And if you take this as an example in a search engine, fill in ESTA, you'll see 3 sponsored ads at the top. Typically, there's between 2 and 4. Now, these all sit above the actual official application page for the ESTA, the Department of Homeland Security, at the bottom there. And just as an example, these paid results will typically offer various services for visas and the ESTA. And at the bottom of the ESTA price, $89, it says government fees are included in this total. Now, the reason these websites don't clearly state what the government fee is because they don't really want people applying for these services to know how much they've marked up the price. If you apply for an ESTA from the UK directly on the Homeland website, it's about £12–14 for 2 years, I think, last time I checked. These guys will add on, in some cases, hundreds of pounds, hundreds of dollars onto the fee. They hope people won't check. They hope people won't ask. And if you look at the actual, the reviews for these services, they are invariably terrible. Just use the official Canadian government website instead. Shocking opportunism. I paid $143 only to have it rejected by New Zealand immigration officials because it's a third-party website. The same application costs $13 on the official site. No idea how they got to the top of Google search engine. They told me if I pay another $118, I can get my ETA immediately. And this is a very common scam tactic, usually seen where people apply for the US visa lottery. So this is a process where every year the US government frees up a whole bunch of green card applications and they try and distribute them to countries that don't typically receive green cards. So you can apply for this online. It's free to apply. It's fairly straightforward to do it. So you will see lots of bogus lottery websites that use all the official branding from the real websites, and they'll claim after the first application that you inevitably won't get because they haven't submitted it. But if you pay an upgrade fee, they will get you the result and the verification of your green card application the same day. And of course, these are all lies. There is no green card. There is no ESTA. One of my relatives a couple of years ago applied for a visa to go to Egypt through one of these websites and lost, a couple of £100, and he had to get refunds from his credit card company. So it's very common. So lots of these scams in search engines are typically the front line of scams targeting people going on holiday, looking to immigrate. Fake WhatsApp visa offers, these are endemic and they have been for a couple of years. So if you look at UK healthcare vacancies, this is data from the NHS from 2018 to 2022. And you can see that from 2020 onwards, vacancies generally increased significantly across the UK healthcare industry. So this is partially down to Brexit with a lot of EU nurses and doctors leaving, and partially down to COVID and the pandemic where lots of healthcare professionals left, returned, and for various reasons either didn't come back because they didn't want to, or their visas expired, or the Home Office system was still shut down and they physically couldn't apply to come back. So UK Gov introduced a healthcare visa and made the process a little bit more straightforward to be able to come to the UK and work as a healthcare professional. So again, UK healthcare visa, you can see that from August 2022 onwards, it starts to spike and it never really goes back down. And this inevitably led to people from places like Nigeria, South Africa, searching for this in a frenzy to get this visa and come over, start a new life, help out people with their healthcare qualifications. And the scammers were ready to move in. So this is a typical example of a text message, WhatsApp message that people, blimey, would receive via WhatsApp. But this is a hideous pile of text. So I'll just make it very straightforward and show you the hook here, which is the program covers travel expense, housing, accommodation, medical facilities. Applicant must be 16 or above, can speak basic English. So, this sounds great, The site uses the official UK Visas immigration logo. It all looks very official. You get free work permits, free plane tickets, answer a few questions, and you'll get the visa. Inevitably, it turns out to be a survey scam, so you end up passing all your data off to third-party advertisers and marketers, and you don't get a visa at the end of it. And if you look at the way the scam works. The scam essentially relies on people not knowing enough about the UK immigration system to know that there's a lot of really bogus things in the details. So free work permit visa, you don't typically get a free work visa unless the workplace covers the cost. That tends to be more common in higher education. It's not really that common for most work visas. Free plane ticket, you usually cover the cost of your flight, again, unless there's relocation packages involved, and there don't tend to be those in UK healthcare. Free accommodation, the Home Office, as much as I would like them to give me a free house, they are not going to give me a free house. Healthcare, they're very vague on this because the rules around how healthcare facilities change very frequently. So at one point, if you worked in healthcare, you paid the immigration health surcharge, which is an additional fee, an annual fee you pay on top of your visa to be able to access the healthcare system on top of your national insurance and tax payments. So healthcare professionals no longer pay this. So these sites are very vague on this point deliberately because they don't quite understand how the rules work. And as far as the age goes, you have to be 18 or over to apply for a work visa in the UK. And if the UK decides that your country doesn't have English as its primary language, they will typically make you do language tests, up to 3, I think, in the case of a spouse visa. So again, most applicants to these things are not going to pull these details apart, and they're going to fall for it. And students are a huge, huge target for scammers. They have been for some years now. These are numbers of students coming from China and India from 2019 to 2022. These aren't all of the students that come to the UK, but these are the 2 biggest cohorts. And as you can see over time, the students from India has increased. And for the first time last year, they became the biggest student cohort. And students from China and India are targeted relentlessly by scammers to the extent that universities, student unions, other sites that help out students will have dedicated pages and hubs giving advice to students from China and India, the kinds of scams that they're attacked with, the kind of things that tricksters will try on them. So blackmail is common, money muling is common, stolen documents is all common. So students will receive tailored text messages claiming to be from the UK tax service on behalf of the Home Office saying, you haven't paid your taxes or your visa's expired, you're in trouble in whichever country you came from, you're going to be arrested and deported unless you wire us some money to pay a fine. Students from China very frequently become embroiled in money mule scams. In Ireland a couple of years ago, I think a number of students were busted after, inadvertently becoming involved in money mule scams operated by professional gangs operating out of Ireland and the UK and other places. And in terms of stolen documents, a couple of years ago, a student from China had their laptop stolen at a train station not long after arriving in London. About a week later, they received a message to visit a so-called Chinese embassy website because they'd broken the rules, their visa had expired, all sorts of problems. And on the website, there were scans of their identity documents, passport, ID card, other data. And the theory is, and they extracted quite a bit of money from this person. The theory is that the documents were on the laptop that was stolen, and then the scammers had basically pasted the details into the website. Which that gives us 2 possibilities. Either someone randomly stole a laptop, randomly found these documents, and randomly decided to set up a fake Chinese embassy website and then, extract money. Or they specifically go around targeting students, hoping that this data is on their laptop. And in a lot of cases, it normally is. When someone arrives, they've normally got this stuff digitally just in case. And then plunked all this data on the fake website to steal a lot of money. We're talking thousands and thousands of pounds. And students are very often targeted. Again, it goes back to this money thing. There is a stereotype that scammers assume that all students are incredibly rich because the courses are, they're expensive. You can pay, between 18 to 30,000 pounds to do a university course in the UK. So they just think, they must have lots of money. We'll target them. And in terms of imitation and identity, these are issues as well. If you need immigration assistance in the UK, you can go onto the government's OISC advisor finder. So these are immigration advisors, and you can search by location, by category of immigration you need help with, whether it's free or paid. So of course the scammers go on here. They assume the identities of the immigration advisors, and then they go off and scam. We're back to these wonderful healthcare scammers again. They misuse the public data. They contact victims by WhatsApp. They use the healthcare visas as bait. And then victims are typically down anywhere between £400 and £600, and they normally have their passport, their identity documents, and everything else stolen at the same time. Again, many of these scams keep coming back to WhatsApp. And you know, it used to be the thing a couple of years ago on social media. People would post up their credit card details when they got a new credit card for the first time, and they've got, you know, all of the card details in the photograph. Now there's a lot of immigration advice firms based outside of the UK that when their clients successfully obtain a visa, they celebrate by running online and posting up photographs of the visa applicant, their identity documents, scans of their biometric cards, passports, you name it. They will post these up. Sometimes some of the details are obscured. Many times they're not. This is an absolutely terrible practice, and this has been going on for some time now. And something I've noticed recently is it's no longer just photographs, it's video as well. So this is a still of a video. They will now upload videos of the successful candidates holding their documents. They will have them speaking. They will have them talking about the successful application. And this is obviously a really bad idea. The number of things that you could use this information for is, you know, it's off the scale. It's a disaster really for the people in these videos and others. And this is becoming more and more popular as time goes on. And even myself, you know, the Home Office is not immune to these kinds of silly antics, really. You know, going back to the complexity of the rules, a lot of people probably aren't aware that if you're in the UK on a visa, even if you have indefinite leave to remain, permanent residency, in theory, you're supposed to notify the Home Office and tell them every single time you move house. So I dig out the form online, we log in, we send them all the information, the new address, the old address, bits and pieces about, you know, passports and biometric identity number. We need to provide proof of address and proof of identity. So my wife uploads a scan of our most recent bank statement and her biometric identity card, which is something that everybody who lives in the UK that's come from overseas, that's here for 6 months or more, is issued a biometric identity card from the government. And that's how you prove your right to reside, your right to work, your right to live here. So we submit this form, we forget about it. A week later, by chance, my wife checks the email. Now we have one dedicated email for Home Office interaction. And, you know, they've mailed back to say, thank you for letting us know about your change of address. Oh, brilliant, you know, something's gone right for a change. No, it hasn't, because further down the email, they've decided to copy and paste all of the information that was submitted in the form and email it to us. So, you know, name, date of birth, nationality, old postcode, passport number, email, legal representative email, new address, and, you know, copies of the attachments, the bank statement and her biometric card are just sitting there in this email. Now, we don't check this very often because we don't need to. If anything, the Home Office is very hands-off once you arrive in the UK. It's up to you to remember to renew your visa or apply for indefinite leave to remain or to get your life in the UK test passed before you do these things. If you don't, it's on you. So, you know, this could have just been sitting there. This email could have been compromised. Someone could have hijacked, you know, we could have forgotten about it, lost access. And I'm sure this happens to lots of people. And now I did have a photograph of her biometric card, but I had to redact so much information that it was just black bars all over the place, and it was very confusing. So essentially, the biometric residence card has your unique ID in the top right-hand corner. It has your actual physical signature scanned and printed on the bottom right. It's got your name. It's got when your residency in the UK expires. It's got the place and date of issue, the type of permit. So are you a student? Are you a spouse? Are you a worker? And other remarks at the bottom. So do you have access to public funds? Are you allowed to work? Can you work any job? Are you restricted from work? All this information is on the front of this card. On the back of it, sometimes you have your national insurance number, but thankfully they only, you know, thankfully they only included a scan of the front of the card. But again, this is all sitting in an email box completely needlessly, and I still don't understand why it was there. So in terms of, you know, what can we do to help? I think the biggest issue is probably to fix the rules. If the rules weren't so complicated, if the rules weren't such a mess to navigate, if it wasn't so difficult to get assistance for the rules, many people wouldn't walk into these scams. The scammers would just give up because a lot of these scams are completely reliant on knowing that people simply can't deal with these rules. We're already at the point where immigration advisors themselves are routinely confused by the rules and have to ask other immigration advisors for help because they change on a daily basis. There are retroactive rules applied. Something you're doing right now that's completely fine and follows the rules might not be the week after. So if the rules were fixed, I think that would be a big improvement. But obviously that's not going to happen. The rules have got worse since 2012, and they continue to become worse. And I think that's common with most immigration systems generally. Migrant aid organizations promoting anti-scam advice. Now, when the invasion of Ukraine happened, the UK invented and introduced its Visas for Ukraine system, which was essentially a refugee path, but with visas attached. But it was rolled out so haphazardly, it was done so badly that lots of scammers started to target applicants from Ukraine. Lots of scammers started to try and collect the data that was floating around on applicants. And a lot of immigration advisors and lawyers set up help organizations where people in Ukraine could contact them securely and ask for help. How do they apply for the visa? How do they get out? But for a period of time, I had lots of immigration advisors coming to me asking for help with their websites because they're immigration advisors. They don't do security. They weren't sure about how to try and fend off phishing attacks, how to keep the data secure from targeted attacks, what fishes to look out for, denial of service attacks on the websites. It was a wild ride for them, and I think if more sites that interact with visa holders had the kind of help pages that universities and other organizations have, I think it would go a long way to try and stamp out some of these scams, especially in the realms of services like WhatsApp. Consensus on tech use for legal assistance. I mean, there's nothing better than being able to contact your immigration advisor at 2 a.m. to ask for help on WhatsApp, but there are so many scammers now making use of this that it's very, very common for immigration organizations, immigration lawyers to have to post up warnings on their websites every other week to tell them, hey, this is not a genuine immigration advisor. This message on WhatsApp is not real. This guy over here is using a genuine firm's data to look legit. This guy over here is using a company that went out of business 3 years ago to look legit. We're going to have to stop using WhatsApp. So, this has like a chilling effect on being able to help people, because previously people could contact their immigration advisor on WhatsApp. Now, because there's so many scams in this area, they're having to gently and now more forcefully steer people away from using it, which just causes more problems. But I think generally immigration lawyers and advisors have to follow a certain routine. They have to follow certain rules. There are many things that they have to do and not do in a very clear way. And I think it's probably beyond time and I think, to be fair, they're already looking at this, trying to come up with a unified way of, which tech do we use, which tech do we not use, how do we get that message across to people in these systems to make sure that they don't wake up tomorrow morning £600 down and no way to renew the visa, and now they face being kicked out of the country, because if they lose the money, they're essentially on their own. No one is going to come in and help at the last minute. So these are just some of the issues out there in these circles, and these are some of the things that keep me up at night, frankly. And thank you for listening. I'm more than happy to field any and all questions if you've got them. Thank you.